Last spring, I challenged myself to wear barefoot shoes every day for a few months. I had no expectation of ending up here, wearing them daily, potentially forever. So in this video, we're going to discuss my experiences thus far, what I've learned, and we're going to speak with a barefoot shoe expert, Steven Sashen, who's going to share some tips and tricks for anyone considering making the switch. Let's get started. This video is sponsored by Paleovalley. Hey guys, it's Robin and welcome to the Science of Self-Care, where we fall in love with the practice of taking care of ourselves so we can live better, longer. Last March, I challenged myself to wear barefoot shoes exclusively for 5 months, and after the 5 months were done, I felt like I wasn't finished. I wanted to keep going. So I have since been wearing barefoot shoes every single day, pretty much 95% of the time. If I have some fancy event, I might put on a nice leather loafer or something with a chunk, but really 95% of the time, or probably more, I'm wearing barefoot shoes. I hike in them, I walk in them, I do errands in them. All this to say, in the beginning, I was a major skeptic of barefoot shoes. I had always learned doing sports growing up, especially running and cross country, that cushion is good, support is good. So barefoot shoes were not really on my radar as something that I would legitimately wear. And now I just can't stop wearing them. So in this video, we're going to talk about my takeaways that I've learned over the past year of wearing exclusively barefoot shoes. And we are going to have a big full circle moment and interview Steven Sashen, one of the founders of a barefoot shoe brand called Xero Shoes. His video is actually what I watched over a year ago when I was deciding how I wanted to approach barefoot shoes, how I wanted to transition into them. So now we get to interview him. We get to pick his brain about the barefoot shoe movement and if he has any tips for people who are transitioning to barefoot shoes from regular footwear. Just a quick review, there's a few key features that make a shoe barefoot. Firstly, the shoe should have zero drop. That means there's no degree of difference between the heel and the toe, just like when you're standing barefoot. So a lot of shoes have a bit of a tilt. You want to be completely flat at a 0-degree drop. You also want the toe box to be wide enough so that your toes can fully splay and spread out and that they're not being pinched together. You also ideally want to be able to bend the sole so that you can actually maneuver your entire foot and that you're not limited by a hard sole. And ideally, the sole should also be thin enough that you can feel the ground and feel all of the uneven surfaces that you're walking over. And that allows your body and your foot to actually respond to those surfaces. And I personally find I actually trip much, much less in barefoot shoes because of this feature. I just really love the way that barefoot shoes have made me feel in my body and have made me stand. Even standing right now in front of this camera, I can tell my entire foot and my legs are engaged in a way that they weren't before. I used to kind of hang in my hips or walk very clumsily, and now just everything is engaged. I feel more like a dancer, if that makes sense. I've never been a dancer, so I don't know what it feels like to be a dancer, but just I always get the impression that dancers are engaging all of their little muscles and very aware of their body. That's how I feel now after a year of wearing barefoot shoes. I quickly realized after switching to barefoot shoes and then trying my old shoes again that I had previously been just stomping down and taking quite crude steps, if you will, not actually feeling the entire ground and taking steps with all of my muscles. It was more like I had peg legs and I was just stomping down, and I did not even realize that that's how I was walking. But now that I spend all of my time barefoot, I feel the difference. And it's very funny because I remember the very first day I ever wore barefoot shoes, I felt so naked. I remember thinking I'm not fully dressed because I was in an airport, which is a very public place. And now if I don't wear my barefoot shoes, I actually feel obstructed, like something is keeping me from fully feeling the ground. So it's funny that I used to feel naked and now I feel obstructed when I'm not in barefoot shoes. So for context, how far am I actually walking? So my average step count has gone down quite a bit over the past year. I used to walk easily above 15,000 steps a day. I'm now walking an average of 12,000 steps over the past year, and in the recent 6 months, around 10,000 steps a day. And this is because I was pregnant. 9 months of this past year. So I really lowered my step count during that time just to give my body plenty of rest. But I was still walking my 10,000 steps every day. And during that whole time, again, wearing my barefoot shoes every day with my pregnant body just felt the best. I know that for some people, pregnancy involves achy joints and more pain, and you might want shoes with a little bit more comfort, squish, and support, but I probably would still opt for something with a wide toe box and zero drop. I personally have just been living in these ballerinas, pregnant and not pregnant, and they've always felt great. I think one lesson I've personally learned from transitioning to barefoot shoes is you definitely want to make the transition gradual because your feet need to actually get used to using those muscles, and you need to strengthen your foot muscles and your leg muscles to support more barefoot walking. So if you make the transition too quickly, you can actually injure yourself because your legs and your feet are not used to fully engaging all those muscles. I don't think I have any good before and afters of my actual legs, but I wouldn't be surprised if my legs are a bit more toned because I actually use more of my calf muscles and just all the muscles in my feet when I'm walking. There's a lot of people who report that their toes start to spread when they're wearing barefoot shoes because their toes are no longer pinched in a toe box, and they also are able to grip things better with their toes. So let's go take a look at that. I'm gonna go take a picture of my feet. So here are all three photos side by side. It's hard to see a difference, but when you do an overlay, you can actually see the differences in the three photos. That's super interesting. So in my previous barefoot shoe video, I actually went to a podiatrist to ask him about barefoot shoes, and I also got a foot x-ray, which revealed that I had a little bit of arthritis on my left big toe joint, and that feels really painful and exacerbated whenever I wear normal shoes. But for some reason, when I wear barefoot shoes, it completely goes away. I'm able to move my toe around as I'm doing now. But whenever I go back to wearing old shoes, it seems like that toe kind of regresses and starts to become painful again. I don't know if it's the lack of mobility of that joint. It's at a point where it's not even really a choice. I wear barefoot shoes because it feels good for me. And if I don't, I will truly regret it. Now, with all of this hiking, rucking, and walking around, I have to make sure that I fuel my body well. And that is why I'm so excited to introduce you to Paleovalley, the sponsor of today's video. I absolutely love their products. They are so delicious, made with high quality ingredients and protein forward. These venison sticks are the most delicious meat sticks I have ever tasted, and I'm not exaggerating. They also have a great bone broth protein powder. It is a very collagen-rich protein powder, and it tastes so good. And then these superfood bars are so yummy. I love to have them as kind of a healthy dessert. They have 10 grams of protein, really good ingredients. I really love them. I think you'll love them too. If you would like to try Paleovalley yourself, you can head to paleovalley.com/selfcare or use code selfcare at checkout for 15% off your first order. Now let's continue talking about barefoot shoes. In many ways, barefoot shoes are still quite fringe, and they're still not fully accepted by podiatrists and the medical community, which I find really fascinating because it seems like there are so many positive anecdotes and accounts of people really loving barefoot shoes. So I'm really excited to explore that discrepancy. Why is there such a difference between what podiatrists are recommending and what people in reality are enjoying and liking wearing? So that is a question I will continue to investigate on this channel, but I'm wondering if Steven has some answers for us. All right, let's go chat with Steven. One quick little note. This video is not sponsored by Xero Shoes whatsoever. I actually reached out to Steven to have this conversation for a few reasons. Firstly, Xero makes the shoe that I wear every single day, these cute little ballerinas. But more importantly, I have watched some of Steven's videos in the past, and it's clear he's incredibly knowledgeable. He's devoted his life to barefoot shoes, so I'm excited to learn from him. So this conversation gets very specific with lots of practical details. I will put timestamps down below so you can make sure to find the information you're looking for. All right, let's get into it. Hello, Steven. You were actually the first face I saw when I was doing research on barefoot shoes, and you were, showing the soles. I think it was one of your videos on one of your shoes. I immediately felt like, okay, I get what a barefoot shoe is, and I'm excited to embark on this journey. But I would love if you could actually first share a bit about yourself and how you came to barefoot shoes or minimalist footwear.
So it hit me now. It was 19 years ago that I got back into sprinting after a 30-year break.
Wow.
And for the next 2 years, I was getting injured constantly. Like I literally don't think there was a 2 week period where I stayed uninjured. And after 2 years of this, a friend of mine who's a world champion cross country runner said, "Why don't you try running barefoot to see what you learn?" Now, I'm going to cut ahead. What you learn when you're running barefoot, and I'm not suggesting people run barefoot, although it did change my life. That doesn't mean you have to do it. But what you learn is pretty simple. Running barefoot, good form feels good, bad form does not. So what we're talking about when we talk about footwear is not about footwear. It's about having your body do what's natural so that you can have the best experience, whether you're walking, running, hiking, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so I go out for my first barefoot run with a bunch of other people. And now I'm a sprinter. I had never run more than a mile in my life, and I didn't do that mile of my own volition. It was with a whole bunch of other people, and I hated everything after the first 150 yards. So I was a little nervous when they said, let's go for a run. But with my bare feet on the ground, I was just so transfixed by the experience because I'm feeling things I'd never felt before. And I wanted to know what would happen. And we ran over grass and on roads and over wooden bridges. I mean, every surface you could think of. So that alone was really, really cool. The second part was I was experimenting, like, what can I do with my gait and the way my body's moving to see how that changes? What happens if I run with the same steps per minute, but I run faster? What if I land on this part of my foot or that part of my foot? I mean, I was just so into the experiment that I just wasn't paying attention to anything else other than how cool it felt and what would happen if I changed things up. And at the end of this run, where we all just decided to stop, I guess, I turned to someone who had a GPS watch on and said, "How far was that?" And she said, "That's a little over 5K." And I went, "What?" A, I had no idea. B, I could have kept going forever, is the way it felt. But then a few minutes later, I noticed something interesting. Ended up with a big blister on the ball of my left foot. Now, most people in that situation would go, "Oh, well, this is complete nonsense because look, I got injured." But my brain, which kind of always goes in other directions, went, "How come my right foot is fine? And my left leg is the one that gets injured more often. So this is interesting." A week later, we decided to do another barefoot run. And I figured I've still got a gaping hole in the ball of my left foot. But if I can find a way to run that doesn't hurt, I'm probably not doing the thing that caused the gaping hole. So I thought, let's just give it 10 minutes. If it doesn't work, no harm, no foul. I can either try again later or just give up, whatever. So 9 minutes and 30 seconds of pure agony later, it literally in one step all changed. Like instantly, I went from ow, 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 this is not fun, to my breathing relaxed, my running got faster and easier. Everything just felt light and airy. It was just, and the pain was gone, just like delightful. Now, I can tell you what I did, but let me say this first. So that changed the way I was running. Again, it's not about footwear, it's about form. So suddenly I have the barefoot form that was right and it felt good. Over the next couple of weeks, my injuries went away. I became faster. And for the last 16 years, I have been a Masters All-American sprinter, which means for my age group, I'm one of the fastest guys in the country. So what happened was that I realized I was doing a thing called overstriding. And this is critical for everybody. It doesn't matter if you're a runner or a walker. It's the number one thing that can cause problems. And overstriding means you're basically putting your foot too far out in front of your body. And it's like putting the brakes on every time you land. For me, as a sprinter, I'm supposed to land on the ball of my foot. So I'm overstriding. And the easiest way to know if you're overstriding is if when you land, your ankle is in front of your knee, you're putting the brakes on. And I'm then pointing my toes. And so I'm hitting that ball of my foot at an angle and putting the brakes on. And that abrasion, that friction caused the blister. So with good form, that stopped happening. And I've also, not only have I been an All-American, but I've basically gone uninjured without any major injury for the last 16 years. And that's unheard of for sprinters. I mean, look, I'm about to be 64 years old. That was the kind of amazing wake-up call. And then I wanted to have this barefoot experience all the time because it felt so fun. But I got a little tired after a while of arguing with restaurants about whether it was legal to be in their restaurant in bare feet. It is, by the way, but that's a whole other story. And my wife, Lena, got tired of me coming into our white carpeted house with my dirty ass bare feet. I knew about the Tarahumara Indians from Mexico who made their shoes out of scraps of tire that they would strap to their feet with, leather laces. So I did the next best thing. I found some rubber from a shoe repair place. I got some cord from Home Depot. I figured out a tying style based on a 10,000-year-old idea. I made some sandals for me and some of the other people in that barefoot running group. And then they told two friends and they told two friends and they told two friends. The guy who ran that barefoot group said, I have a book called Barefoot Running that's coming out. If you had a website for your little sandal making hobby, then I could put you in the book. We launched the product with a do-it-yourself sandal making kit. We'd sell you a sheet of rubber, string, and instructions for this 10,000-year-old design. And the first pair we sold was to someone in Minnesota where it was already snowing. I was like, okay, that's weird. But then we started hearing from people who made their own shoes, and they were saying, this just changed my life. My fill in the blank went away. Things I haven't been able to do for years, I'm doing again. Things I've never been able to do, I'm doing for the first time. And we then started realizing what happens when you let your body function correctly. And we knew that we were on to something life-changing, literally.
I'm curious because you're saying change people's lives, and this is something I personally can relate to, but I want to hear from your perspective. What is it, do you think, about the barefoot or minimalist shoe experience that changes people's lives? Is it the increased level of feedback and the ability to respond to that feedback? Is it something else?
It's that and more. So I want to hear about your experience too. But the gist is, let's go back to this overstriding thing. So if you're landing and putting on the brakes, when you're landing with your ankle in front of your knee, you're landing with a relatively straight leg. And so the force that happens when you land, and typically landing on your heel, has to go somewhere. And it's going to go straight up into through your joints, through your ankle, your knee, your hip, and your back. And those joints aren't meant to handle force like that. In fact, they don't have the sensory information that you have in the sole of your foot. So you don't even feel it, frankly, until it's too late and your knees are shot or your hips are shot or your back is shot or even your neck can be problematic. So when you're landing properly with your feet more underneath your center of mass, when you're feeling the ground and able to adjust better because you're getting information to your brain that's then back to your feet that can actually function, and we'll talk more about that in a bit, then your muscles, ligaments, and tendons are working in the way they're designed as natural springs and shock absorbers and joint protectors. I like to ask really stupid questions. Like when I ask these people, think I'm literally trying to trick them. I'm not. So one of the questions I say, which is better, restriction or freedom? And I go, not a trick question. They go, freedom? Most shoes have pointy toe boxes. They squeeze your toes together. Why would you want that? You don't do push-ups like this. You do push-ups like this. You have better balance, better agility, better mobility. Same thing with your feet. So another thing is those shoes elevate your heel. That tips you forward just a little bit. It doesn't seem like much, but even a tiny little bit tips you forward enough that you need to make an adjustment with your knees, your ankles, your hips, your back. And that's putting strain on muscles, ligaments, and joints that aren't meant to have that. So there's another one. Here's another stupid question. This one's my favorite. Which is better, weaker or stronger? And people will, again, they think I'm trying to trick them. And I go, not a trick question. They go, stronger. I said, cool. Let's talk about what you don't want, weaker. So if I want to make this thing, my arm, weaker, what do? People will go, don't use it. I go, yeah. So if I put a cast around my arm, around my elbow, this one joint, then the muscles, ligaments, and tendons around it get weaker because they're not being used. It's use it or lose it. This is not rocket science. You have a quarter of the bones and joints of your entire body in your feet and ankles. So then I take a normal shoe and go, how much is that letting those bones and joints and ligaments and tendons and things move? Or if you put an orthotic in your shoe, same kind of thing. People like to argue about this one. We don't have to do the argument part, but the simple thing is it's like putting a cast on your foot. And there's research from Katrina Protopopos and others where they took healthy individuals, put orthotics in their shoes, and within 12 weeks, they had lost up to 17% of the strength and muscle mass in their feet. When is that good? You've already said weaker is not better than stronger. So that's another thing that's problematic. You mentioned the feedback. Why would it make sense to have 200,000 nerve endings in the sole of each foot, more than anywhere else in your body but your fingertips and your lips? So your brain can feel what you're stepping on and stepping in. So it can help you move effectively and efficiently, and probably most importantly, enjoyably over whatever surface you're on by being able to send messages back to your feet. And if you're not getting the messages, that's a problem. And if you can't do anything with the messages, that's a problem. So that's what makes this all life-changing, is that you're getting that feedback that's allowing you to make the natural gait changes that allow your body to do. Basically, we want to give your feet the ability to do their job so the rest of your body can do its job. My father is one of those people who tripped on something, fell down, broke his hip, and was dead just a little while later.
I'm
going to pause and say some people get a little critical when they say that I was pretty chill when I said that. A, it was 12 years ago, and B, we weren't that close. But here's the thing. Research just recently came out, sponsored by the CDC, that showed elderly people who wore our shoes, balance improved and their fall risk decreased. This is an $80 billion problem, and we can be part of helping that. This is the part where I get choked up because I can't do anything about my dad. We can do a lot about a lot of other people. But there's a reason to inject what we're doing into your life. And that is another fun piece of research where Dr. Sarah Ridge showed that just walking in a minimalist shoe builds foot strength as much as doing a foot exercise program. There's another piece of research that came from Isabel Sacco in Brazil, where she had people doing that foot exercise program. And then one group that did the exercise program, one group didn't. And they ran in whatever shoe they wanted to, didn't matter. And the group that did the exercise program, that got stronger, they had 250% fewer injuries over the course of a year than the group that didn't have stronger feet. So, and if you get stronger feet by just walking in a minimalist shoe, you can do the math. So if you're happy in some big, thick shoe that you're running in, great. But as soon as you can, get out of those, put on some of these just to walk around the house, to run errands, help your feet get stronger, have some active recovery because you're actually getting some movement and circulation. And that strength that you're building will actually make you more injury resistant in that big, thick shoe if you want to wear that. And you're not going to wear out those $300 shoes so fast anyway, so we can help you save a few bucks.
You were asking a bit about my own experience. To speak to the falling less and increased strength in feet, those are both things I have really noticed with myself. I am someone who always grew up kind of fumbling. I'm very tall, so my cross-country coaches used to describe me as a baby giraffe learning to walk. So I was used to always kind of stumbling around, and since switching to barefoot shoes, I'm just tripping less. My steps seem more conscious and controlled, and I feel like I have a lot more control over my legs and my body. So that is something I've personally really noticed as well as just feeling that I'm engaging all these muscles in my feet that I didn't even know were there until switching to barefoot shoes. So that really mirrors a lot of my own experience.
Well, two things. One, yesterday I went to my pharmacist to pick something up, and he said, "Hey, I finally went to your store." I said, "And?" Now, this is a guy who's on his feet for 8 to 10 hours a day. He said, "I got your shoes and I wore them around the house for about an hour. And I instantly went, I cannot believe how weak my feet are because they're already feeling sore." I said, "It's like going to the gym if you haven't been to the gym in a year." He goes, "Oh, no, I get it. I'm just shocked. I've been like babying my feet thinking that was the answer, but it's clear I just need to take some more time to build up the strength and then I'm going to be fine." And we have people who are on their feet all day long who say the same thing. Someone who worked in the Amazon warehouse. She said, "I used to go home every night and pray I could make myself feel better by the next morning to get back to work. Now I'm like totally fine at the end of the day."
I would love to touch on that for a second, because when I was first getting into barefoot shoes, I really wanted to also talk to a podiatrist about their perspective. I just love to get so many different perspectives. And so I wanted a more traditional medical perspective. And the podiatrist shared with me that during COVID, he got a lot of people coming in with foot issues because unbeknownst to them, they were now spending their entire days walking around their hardwood floor barefoot, and they were having a lot of pain and issues in their foot. And to your point, going from always wearing a cushy, tight shoe that's acting as a cast to your foot to now 24/7 being barefoot could be a very brutal transition. So I want to go into that transitional period a little bit with you. How do you recommend people start to make the switch to avoid injuring themselves or not feeling great?
Well, first of all, I say to those podiatrists a number of things. I ask them, have you done any gait analysis? Have you watched how they're walking? Have you watched how they're moving? Have you seen if they have any other imbalances or any other muscular problems that we're talking about? Because again, we're talking about natural movement. We're not talking about footwear. And it is most likely and more often just what you described is that you're making the transition too fast. You can't go, I don't know what the cold turkey or hot turkey would be from switching from shoes to bare feet. But if you just think of it again, like you put your arm in a cast, when you take your arm out of the cast, then you can't move it properly for a while. And if someone tries to do that, it's really painful and you can get injured. Like most physical therapists, what they do with a person who has an injury is they want to give them as much motion as possible while still being pain-free. And you want to have that same mindset. The way I say it is, if you want to learn to run barefoot, you want to start with a nice, smooth, hard surface because you're going to get the most feedback from that. You want to go barefoot if you can, otherwise something minimalist like what we're doing. And you want to go for a very short run, like 20 seconds. And if it doesn't feel good, Do something different till you're having fun. So what that means is, again, bad form feels bad, good form feels good. Take that 20 seconds and try to figure it out and just see what happens. Achilles or calf pain is because you're just not using those things correctly. You're basically using them the same way you did when you were in a shoe that had a big elevated heel and a pointy toe, but you don't need to. So for example, if you have heard you're supposed to land on the ball of your foot or your midfoot when you're running barefoot, but you're overstriding still, that's going to put a lot of strain on the musculature. You're going to be doing an eccentric loading of your calf and Achilles. So you're trying to slow down how your heel comes to the ground, which puts the most strain on your musculature. Or you're pushing off the ground, which you have to do in a stiff shoe with this what's called toe spring, where you can't flatten the shoe. So your feet can never actually, your toes can never bend. They can never plantar flex, point towards the ground. So if you start pushing off the ground, you're now putting more strain on your calves and your Achilles tendon. If instead you want to think about lifting your foot off the ground, like if you step on a bee, you don't push your foot into the ground to get off the bee sting. You lift it by flexing your hip. It's the same idea that you want to have. Or a friend of mine has a great cue. As your foot is coming off the ground, imagine that you're kneeing a soccer ball to somebody in front of you. It's like a great cue for getting your foot off the ground in the right way. So first of all, we have a lot of podiatrists who are getting hip to this whole idea. No podiatrist would argue that weakness is better than strength, that numbness is better than feeling, that restriction is better than freedom. And we have a lot of podiatrists who are, again, like I said, getting hip to this and starting to find a way to work with people to just monitor what they're doing as they're making a transition. The ones who stick to their guns, I totally understand for a number of reasons. And I'm not trying to be critical of anybody in particular, because some of what I'm going to say applies to all human beings all the time, everywhere. What happens is when you present someone who has a belief with something that contradicts what they believe, they normally we have a knee-jerk reaction and we will cling even tighter to what we believe. It's very common. I mean, literally, this is what human beings do. The research is very clear. You can see it all the time. A lot of podiatrists have made a lot of money by prescribing orthotics to people year after year after year. And if you're now telling someone that a major source of their income might disappear, they're going to be a little more protective of that story as well. When I go to podiatric events, or like the American Physical Therapy Association or the American College of Sports Medicine, what's very interesting is most of the people who are really hip to what we're doing are the younger practitioners who are still figuring it out and still curious and still experimenting and still learning. And then there's a group of the older ones who have, for whatever reason, the way their brain works is they're committed to investigating and finding out what's true. I won't mention two very famous doctors by name who we became friendly because, and literally the day that I met them, I said, I'm really looking forward to meeting you because you've done something that very few people will do. You spent many millions of dollars to prove something that you believed was true. And you found out from the results of your own research that it was not true. And you totally changed your mind because you proved it yourself. And that's the kind of person that I can trust.
I just love getting all these different perspectives, and especially people who are critical of something. I also want to welcome that. So I want to also share a little bit about some of the comments that have come into my other barefoot shoe video. So many people have overwhelmingly positive experiences that like you said, their XYZ pain has disappeared or it's been life-changing. I also get some comments that feel like the traditional barefoot shoe without any sort of cushioning is a little bit hard on their joints. I know you just mentioned that we should be experimenting with running on a very hard, smooth surface, but I also think about how often we are now walking on much harder surfaces than if we were just walking through nature and through...
I love this one.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to ask if you believe that that sort of joint pain that comes from walking without a lot of support is just not updating our ability to stride in a better way. But I'll let you take it because I think you've probably gotten this question a lot.
Well, first of all, I just came back from a vacation where my wife and I were walking. I was walking, this shoe that I'm showing is, we call it the Speed Force. It's the closest thing to barefoot that we make in a shoe. It's literally just 4.5 millimeters of rubber. That's it. My wife was walking in the same shoe you have, the Phoenix. And there are a couple others that she wears as well. And I was also using our Z Trail sandal. But we were on hard surfaces for, between 15 and 20,000 steps a day for day after day after day after day, not a problem. This is in Lisbon. This is in Morocco. I've done this in New York. I've walked barefoot in Manhattan. The one argument people make is, well, we didn't evolve to walk on these hard surfaces. To which I say, we didn't evolve to do a standing backflip or fly fighter jets either, but I can do the former and I have a friend who does the latter. So the things that we evolved to do doesn't mean that there aren't other things that we're adapted to be able to do. And if you go to the places where we evolved, that packed mud is harder than the concrete you're working on, or at least it's as hard with other stuff poking up and sticking through it. You would not want to be on that stuff at all. And yet there are still people living in those places who are totally fine going around barefoot. So they're happy when they get some footwear to give them a little protection from all the stuff sticking out of it, but it's fine. So when it comes to walking, it's the same story. Good form feels good, bad form hurts. What people are almost always doing now, I'm going to get a little deeper in this than I thought I was going to. What's happening for those people who have a harder time is they're not giving themselves time to get the right amount of feedback to let their body make that change to a more natural gait. My undergraduate research was on cognitive aspects of motor skill acquisition. And from doing that work, I have a theory about how people learn new movement patterns. You need feedback. You need to get it in slow motion and small doses until your brain can adapt to that. And then you can start doing a little faster and a little more. So if you're just switching too quickly, that can be problematic. But that first part, you have to get the feedback. If you've been wearing a big, thick shoe, you've basically told your brain that it's not going to get information. So stop paying attention. So some people literally can't feel, like I said, if it hurts, do something different until having fun. They literally can't feel if it hurts, whether they're running or walking. They need to spend some time on some mildly stimulating surfaces, pea gravel, or, the concrete in your driveway, whatever it is, to just kind of wake up your brain. There's literally your brain, when you don't give it information, it does a thing called de-differentiation. Your brain literally changes its shape.
Neuroplasticity.
It's about neuroplasticity in a way that's the opposite of the way we think of it. We think of it as a good thing, but it's neuroplastic in a way that can be, well, it's protective. You don't need to waste energy if you're not getting the information that part of your brain is looking for. So it takes a time for it to redifferentiate and get back to normal. So you want to give yourself that time as well. Some people, they can feel things, but we don't have great proprioceptive skills. And proprioception is knowing where your joints are so you know where your body is in space. So I remember being a young gymnast when I was 12 years old. And part of the compulsory floor exercise routine was you had to do a couple things where you had to put your arms parallel to the ground. And we would put our arms parallel to the ground, we thought, and our coach would say, no, lower. And we go, no, now I'm pointing to the ground. It's like, no, that's parallel. But from your eye's perspective, that doesn't look parallel. And we had to get feedback about what was true until we just got that in our brain and body that here's parallel and here's not. That's a thing that is true for a lot of people, is we don't have great proprioceptive skills. So what do you do for that? You just need, ideally, like video feedback is really helpful. So you can see if you're doing what you think you're doing. I made a video about how to walk that talks about a way of walking that I would argue is a more natural way of walking. Here in the West in particular, we tend to throw our foot out in front of us, overstriding, and then kind of push to get over it, or pull back to get over that foot. If you think about ice skaters, what they do is they push backwards to move forward. And you can do the same thing. The foot that is planted can push backwards. And in doing that, using the two biggest muscle groups in your body, your butt and your hamstrings, to move you forward. And if you relax your front leg, I know this is been a little fast, you have to watch the video. If you relax your front leg and don't kick it out in front of you, when it lands, it'll almost naturally land kind of midfoot or the ball of your foot, almost right underneath your center of mass. So you're not overstriding and heel striking and putting yourself in a weaker position where you can actually then use your muscles, ligaments, and tendons properly aligned to help you. And there's another group that they're naturals. They figured out right away, but their problem is that they had so much fun that they just kind of keep going, and then they get tired because like still, if I'm walking 10 miles a day in a barefoot shoe, my feet are tired at the end of the day because I use them for a whole day. So they go past the tired point and then sort of revert to one of those earlier stages. And they just didn't notice because that happens very slowly. The bottom line is there's not a cookie cutter paint by number something. Everybody's brain and body is going to work a little bit differently, but the fundamental thing is still true. Good feels right, bad does not. And the basic thing you want to stop doing is overstriding and heel striking. And if you can play with those and find those two things, you're off to the races. And again, you haven't been using these muscles, ligaments, tendons for a while. Give yourself time to adjust both in your brain and your body, and then you'll be fine.
So I want to get really practical about that giving yourself time. Does this mean that, let's say someone, because I personally would probably fall in the latter group who would be excited by it and walk way too much in the beginning and not give my feet enough time to recover. If someone has never worn barefoot shoes before and this is their first foray into it, how long should their first session be? How long should that period of that first session length be? I want to make it so specific. Obviously, it depends on the person.
But I'll give you a specific answer that's not specific. So first, it depends on what you're doing. Do you want to just be able to stand up for a while, or are you walking for a while, or do you want to be running? It's different for each of those. So the next thing I like to ask people is, how are you when you're just in bare feet, either at home or on the beach or somewhere? If you're comfortable walking around in your bare feet in your home, you're basically fine. For walking, if you're comfortable standing in bare feet for some time, then you're fine doing that too. If you've tried running in bare feet, now I want to be clear, the hard surface is really important. Some people will say, oh, you want to run on something soft like sand or grass. You do not want to do that, because what that's doing is not giving you that feedback about whether you're doing it correctly. And in grass, it can be uneven, and there can be things in it. And so, bad idea. And I'm going to talk about cushioning again in a second, I think. So if you're cool standing and that's what you want to do, then put on the shoes and just walk around the house, stand at what you're doing. Like if you're on your feet all day, if you're a hairdresser or you work in a restaurant or you're a pharmacist or whatever, wear the shoes for an hour, see how you feel. If you're walking, walk for 10 minutes, see how you feel. If you're running, 20 seconds, legit, 20 seconds. And if it feels like the next day you've just worked out too hard in the gym and you're sore, and by the way, as you get older, it takes another day for the soreness to kick in. So, it might take a little more than a day, but if you feel like you just did a little too much and got sore, wait till you feel better, maybe pull back a little bit. And then when you can do whatever that distance or time is comfortably, add a little distance or time. When you can do that comfortably, add a little distance or time. If you feel like you really hurt something, then you're definitely overstriding and heel striking or doing some other thing where you want to, I'm going to give a couple cues that could be helpful, but you definitely want to get videotape and someone, you might want to explore. There are a couple of people we can refer to who are teaching this well, that are helpful. It's, getting an outside opinion is great. Like I was doing pretty well. And then there's this one particular coach, I don't want to name him by name right now, who just did a slow motion video of me, and he compared me to Usain Bolt. Now, I am not Usain Bolt. He is a foot taller than me and a little faster than I am, just a tiny bit. And so, but his form, he said, it doesn't matter how fast you're running, this should be your form. And where your legs are in space, you're 3 frames too slow. You've got to be where he is at the same time, and you're a little slow. And I didn't know that. I couldn't feel that. That cue of like, pretend you're kneeing a soccer ball, that was the thing that worked for me. And I've seen it work for a lot of other people too. It comes from my friend, Doug Adams. But there are other cues that are helpful. Like you want to think about lifting your foot off the ground before it even touches the ground. So you're ready as soon as you feel it to lift it off the ground. You could think about having your feet on a wheel. So your feet are just barely contacting the ground as they're going through this cyclical motion. You can think about Fred Flintstone starting his car, and you want your feet to land behind you. It's not possible, but that can give you a cue. Or you want to exaggerate it, make it worse. Land with your feet further out in front of you and more on your heel, and feel what it's like to be doing it wronger, and then try to pull back. Because you've gotten used to doing it the way you've been doing it. You got to wake up your brain. And keep in mind that as you're learning something new, anything that feels like frustration is just your brain telling you it's using new and laying down new neural pathways. That's how learning happens. Learning happens in the resting period after you've done a short, small bit of dosing of the new thing. And when you go back, like I remember learning some drills when I was sprinting that I couldn't figure out how to do. I just couldn't get the coordination right. And I'm pretty coordinated, so it was really annoying. But I noticed that I would try the drill for a few minutes on day 1, couldn't do it. Then I'd come back 3 days later and I was better. Well, how? I hadn't done anything in between, but that's how your brain works, is it lays down the new neural pathways after the stimulus. So that's my non-specific, specific answer.
Well, it's helpful because actually, coincidentally, earlier this month, I went for my first run in barefoot shoes. In many, many months, I had tried it once and I didn't really like it. I don't run that much. I actually do a lot of rucking, walking, hiking, Pilates, yoga. So I'm not a big runner, but I was feeling the urge to go for a nice long jog.
I have never had that thought in my life. It has never occurred to me, let's take a nice long jog.
I just wanted some fresh air in my face, but I can't use any of my old running shoes anymore. They hurt my feet. So I had a pair of barefoot shoes that I've been using for long walks, and I wore those running and I ran for 40 minutes and it felt great. And it's kind of weird because I haven't run in a long time, but the fact that I was able to run in them for 40 minutes and it felt totally fine. I do think, to your point, I felt like my stride was a little bit shorter and I was maybe not running how I usually run, but I was, again, just running how it felt comfortable. I'm wondering, is that because I've now spent so much longer these past months building up these foot muscles, even just walking and hiking, that it now made the transition a lot easier? I was curious what your take on this is, since you've seen so many people make this transition.
My best answer is, I don't know. I would have to watch, but I mean,
Yeah.
you've been kind of brewing or marinating in this for a while. So it's not like, you came to it brand new. The walking has certainly been helpful. Your investigating has certainly been helpful. And just a bit of an understanding. And of course, your feet have, I'm sure, gotten stronger as well. So there's all of that put together. I've seen that happen. It's actually something that happens quite often where someone says, I don't want to run in barefoot shoes. I'm just walking or running errands or whatever. But then one day they have to run across the street and they go, oh my God, that was really fun.
So interesting. I'm still figuring out my own journey here, and it never ends.
No, it really doesn't. I mean, I've been doing this now for, 17 plus years, and I still learn new things. I still, feel different things, or I discover something that I didn't know I could do or hadn't tried doing.
Are there any, I know probably a big theme of this conversation is it depends, we're all individual and we really have to tune into our personal experience, but are there any common practices, like you've mentioned, overstriding, that can lead someone to experience pain? Because I've also seen some people with, for example, plantar fasciitis struggle with barefoot shoes. Are there other things besides overstriding that sometimes cause pain for people?
Well, so overstriding is the cause. Plantar fasciitis is an effect from something else. And in fact, there is research coming out about barefoot shoes and plantar fasciitis. I won't say anything else, but the fact that I'm bringing it up is enough of a hint. Again, it's about form, not footwear. So I would never say anything about, someone's specific condition without watching how they're moving. And there's a whole bodywork system called Feldenkrais method. That's a big part of Feldenkrais. It's like if you have a problem on the left side of your body, we're going to do a bunch of stuff on the right side of your body so your brain gets hip to what the correct way of doing it is. So then when we go to the left side, it's already a little primed to do that same thing. So if you're okay being barefoot, that's a good sign. If something is better on one side than the other, that's also a good sign. If there's something you can do that isn't painful, then kind of lean into that. And again, like a physical therapist is going to put you through the movement that you can handle that isn't painful, because lack of movement, again, weakens things. That's never the solution. The thing that's important is not, is someone getting some problem in a barefoot shoe? The question is, out of the 100 people wearing a barefoot shoe, is the percentage who are getting that problem higher or lower than the 100 people in a normal shoe? And what I can tell you is that plantar fasciitis is one of the biggest problems for people wearing normal shoes. It's going to be caused by what your body is doing that's putting strain on the plantar fascia. And the thing that'll put the most strain on the plantar fascia is if you land on your heel and your foot is stretched out and then your foot comes down flat in a shoe that doesn't let your foot move. So everything is being stretched in a time where it's supposed to be stable. So overstriding, heel striking, and landing with your foot flat is putting you in that weaker position where you don't have the strength to support things. My favorite story about this, I'm at a trade show and a guy who's special forces shows up, 6'5", no body fat. I mean, like, holy mackerel, what a human specimen. And he says, we've all switched to barefoot shoes, but a lot of us got plantar fasciitis. And I looked at him and I can see some of these things. I said, you got really tight calves. He said, what do you mean? I said, can I stick my thumb on your calf? He said, yeah. I could see just the right spot. And I just put my thumb on his calf and the guy fell to the ground like a tree toppling. And I sat there like rubbing the crap out of this for about 5 minutes. I said, stand up and walk around. And he goes, oh my God, it's like 90% better on that side. I said, yeah, go back to the base, have your PT do that every day for a week and let me know what happens. And I saw him a year later. He goes, well, that was it. We all got better because we stopped overusing our calves. So often misdiagnosed, often from overstriding heel striking. So we have to be careful about looking at the effect of something and thinking it's a cause of something.
Yes. Well, just to circle back on the podiatrist story. So this was a podiatrist who noted a lot of people coming in during COVID because they were walking without shoes around their house. Now, that doesn't tell us anything about all the people who are walking around their house and are totally fine. So I just think it's a very interesting anecdote, but I'm not trying to draw any conclusions from it. Are there any additional, I know by nature of walking in barefoot shoes, you are strengthening your foot muscles and your leg muscles. Are there any additional exercises you recommend people do to help the transition?
That's a fun question. So the exercise program that I mentioned, I actually have in an ebook, and I'm going to have to get a link so you can give that to people. Well, the other thing is if you go on YouTube and search for BYU, for Brigham Young University, BYU foot strengthening or foot exercises, you'll find them all there. That was where they did that research on walking versus doing an exercise program. But there's another thing. There's a product that we sell on our website called the Slack Block. Basically, it's like if you've been to a gym where they have that blue foam that's like this really dense foam, it's like a chunk of that with a piece of wood on top that you can use for balance. It's unstable. So that's a really good thing for building foot strength, the Slack Block. There's another thing from a research physical therapist named Jay DeSherry. And Jay DeSherry has a thing called the MOBO board, MOBO. That's another very good foot strengthening thing. Now, these are all things that you can buy. You don't need to buy stuff, but if you're, a gadget geek like I am, I own them all. And again, the exercises that you can find from just doing that search or in the ebook that I can get you.
Oh, amazing. I'll collect some of those resources and add them in the description box.
Sorry, here's one that's not in there. Hopping, jumping rope.
Just to touch a moment on the splaying of the toes, I have noticed, because I took little pictures of my feet, that my toes have started to go a little bit wider. And are we essentially assuming that's good because it allows us, like you were saying, when doing a push-up to have more stability? Or what are the real benefits of having wider spread toes?
I think it's for balance, agility, mobility. It's balancing on something narrow is harder than balancing on something wide, whether it's your foot or a board. Same idea.
If something was to go wrong, what is the biggest common mistake that people make in the transition? Is it just too much too quickly?
Too much too soon. And the irony about too much too soon is the only way you know you've done too much too soon is that you just did too much too soon. Mm-hmm. We've all done it. I mean, the version of it I get is I want to run a marathon in a barefoot shoe, but at the 15-mile mark, my feet start to hurt. It's like, well, then you're not ready to run a marathon. You've either gotten tired and reverted to some bad form, or you're just not strong enough yet. It's not just your feet. There's other parts of your body involved in running a marathon. Human beings have been doing this for as long as there have been human beings. The latest version of Barefoot Shoes, I have seen all manner of people find that this is an option that has been very helpful for them. Now, it's not for everybody all the time. I also say there's certain situations where a regular shoe is what you need to do. Great. This is your backup plan for staying healthy and happy. But if you have some significant physical something, do what you need to do. There's nothing that I can see for the majority of people that prevents you from having that same experience and going out and living life feet first.
Really quickly, those edge cases, are there any edge cases that you've seen where it does make sense to have your foot in a cast for a bit?
If you've got a serious injury, the reason orthotics were originally made was that people had injured their foot and they wanted to be able to move without actually using their foot. So if you have a significant deformity of some point that you already know about, you're already dealing with it. This may not be the right thing, but there may be some version that's worth experimenting with. Again, stronger is better than weaker. How do you get strong? By using your body. Feeling is better than numbness. How do you feel? By using things. Freedom is better than restriction. See what you can do to, however that works for you. Like I say, for running barefoot, do something different to having fun. Fun and comfort should be a guide. Doesn't mean it's going to be like that immediately. But if you get a little bit of it, that's a possibility, then you can dive into that a little bit and let that expand slowly, 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 as much as your brain and body can handle until you will have forgotten those early days and what that was like.
Thank you so much, Steven. I think this conversation is definitely going to be part of your larger mission to educate people. And I've already learned a lot, and I'm someone who's been now kind of investigating this for a year. The results are self-apparent when you try it yourself. I'm shocked. I was really a skeptic, or not even a skeptic, but I didn't want to like them because I have my favorite pair of leather loafers. They're just so beautiful, but I can't wear them anymore. So it's a sad end of an era, but I feel so amazing in how I stand. Thank you so much, Steven. Bye. I would love to know if you have tried Barefoot Shoes. Are you a lover of them, a hater, a skeptic? Please share your thoughts down below. I love when the comment section of these videos becomes a forum of crowdsourced wisdom. I learn so much from you guys, and I know you guys learn a lot from each other. So thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you next time.